we're continuing our talk about approaches, employee development as we go through. And really, if you're an employer and you want to develop your employees, you need to give them opportunities to develop as an individual, develop as a professional, stretch them as you go through. As a matter of fact, sometimes we call them stretch assignments. That being said, a stretch assignment pushes somebody to their ultimate limit as they possibly can. It may be new turf for them to do. And guess what? It's possible you may stretch them and they may fail in the process, which is part of actually growing in leadership, growing in responsibility, and growing as part of the values of the company overall. One of the major stretch assignments that I was given, I was pulled out of my role as a chief business officer for one of 5 campuses, and I was given a strange thing. I was given a couple things. I was an internal auditor. By the way, you never want to be an internal auditor as far as I'm concerned, because when you walk into the room, instead of everybody being friendly to you, they all go quiet because you're there to check them out to make sure they're doing their work. Oh my gosh. And if they don't, you have to write a report telling them where they're failing at it. Not just that, it's a money aspect. You count the money physically. You pull their drawers out of the cash registers and everything else. You count the money. You check their petty cash. You count how many places they receive revenues from. And you also check to make sure everybody's following the corporate policy. And if you're not, doom will happen to you. Oh my gosh. I am a people person. You might figure that out. And so for me to sit down and be in this role where I am in charge and you must follow the rules, oh my gosh, that for me was a stretch because of the fact it pushed me out of my boundaries into being the ultimate rule keeper. You will keep the rules. That being said, within a year, I advanced into a district-wide position that had more money and more responsibility. It was a stretch assignment. It was hard for me to do because it set down or affected a personality aspect, and I had to become the rule keeper, but it led on to bigger things as you go through. So sometimes you look in the current job, you enlarge it, you may rotate the job. In my case, I could have gone to a different college, a transfer, a promotion. Sometimes even a downward move can actually lead to an upward move at a later point as you go through. Use job experiences for the employee as you go through. Lateral transfers to a different department. They're terrifying. It may be the best thing. It might prepare you for that upper level in the process as you go through. You may see a promising employee here and you move them over here, maybe even down here a little bit, and all of a sudden they have the right to leap up over to here because they learned a new skill set as they go through and adapted really well. A couple of things formally that you need to know for the test, but also in life, is called job enlargement. Somebody may be sitting on the job and you want to challenge them. You just go through and enlarge the work as you go through. Sometimes another term is called job rotation, which is a lateral move. You move them from this job to this job. Usually it's the same pay schedule as you go through, but that change helps them appreciate the company's goals from a different perspective. They're sitting in this chair over here in the process to set up this chair over here. That little change helps them to understand the company differently. It'll affect their satisfaction and give them a broader view of the company. The keepers, the one you want to keep around, this is a really good way to get them to see the bigger picture as you go through. Transfers, promotions, downward moves, all of them could be a change in the company, could be a change in that person as they go through, a change in their career, and also maybe keep them from leaving the company for someplace else. All those are positive. Sometimes you even move them to a different part of the country as you go through. Sometimes you move them to a different country if you're an international organization as well. That being said, that has all kinds of other risks that we'll talk about at a later time as you go through. A lot of times employees don't appreciate transfers or downward moves for development. Sometimes they see it as punishment. You have to couch it appropriately, and sometimes extra compensation will help them with that as they go through, especially if they're leaving the corporate office into out there in the field. Some people view the corporate office as the ultimate haven for the ultimate place to be, and anything else is less in the process, but sometimes it's not as you go through. Temporary assignments, projects, volunteers, even A sabbatical to work on a special project sometimes can lead to greater things. And sometimes you as an employer may have to sit down there and make certain it does lead to greater things as you go through. Volunteer assignments, ask for, I want to volunteer for this, and then they can pat it on their internal resume as they go through. Sometimes you can sit down there and assign a mentor, usually a senior employee, sometimes a peer as you go through. Sometimes you want to assign a mentor as you go through for a two-way exchange. No matter what happens, typically your more senior employees are not as tech savvy as your younger employees. Sometimes you have a mutual relationship where knowledge is exchanged and a deep appreciation for different generations, different talents, and different personalities really is crossbred between the two, and you have bonds that last a long time in the organization and build both the people, the mentor and the mentee, and sometimes those roles reverse on different topics as you go through. Successful formal mentoring programs, here's a shopping list of things for you to consider as you go through. The mentor and a protege, they participate together voluntarily as you go through. It can be ended any time without fear of punishment or retribution as you go through. You sit down there and match the skills, how they can meet the protege's needs as you go through. So here's a shopping list of 10 different points as you go through. Make certain if you formalize a program, here is an excellent way of doing it with these 10 points to sit down and do it. I've done a couple of them as you go through. Sometimes they're highly successful. Sometimes personalities get in the way and there's difficulty as you go through. So approaches to building interrelationships as you go through, career support, psychosocial support, sometimes going out to lunch every other week is actually pretty healthy as you go through. Sometimes going out to dinner or some other place is also helpful. And also sometimes that reverse mentoring where the person that's mentoring is actually learning from the person that is new and fresh, listening to them as you go through. A lot of times coaching, keep in mind, a lot of supervising nowadays is coaching. It's one-on-one. How did you feel about that? Okay, here's my perspective. When you did this over here, you may have alienated that person. I never thought about that. Well, you got to think about that because that person's going to be here a long time. And if they're your enemy, you may sit down and even though you were right in the process, you may have created something that isn't necessary to, you could have handled it this way. I never thought about that. Okay, so that's what, and you sit down and have these dialogues. They really can help on that person advance, but also help them appreciate the organization and other people's talents as they go through. Coaching is a big thing. Sometimes you want to do it informally, but a lot of times formally as you go through. So here is 6 different things to consider when you're looking at employee development programs or being a participant as an employee, things you want to grasp on as you go through. Stretch assignments, job rotation, temporary assignments that should go through. I've had a couple of those very successful, mentorships, coaching, and even lateral transfers. All 6 of the things should be part of the tools for human resources to sit down there and develop future leaders in the organization, as well as keeping employees happy and satisfied long-term to own the goals of the company. Take care.